Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. All right, everyone. Well, hey, welcome to another edition of the Exponential Growth Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, somebody I've known probably 20 years-ish through the technology industry and just all the amazing things that he's done. You know, this is a Fortune 500 former CEO, Silicon Graphics. You know, there's all this talk about chips and all that kind of. Silicon Graphics was really one of the leaders in the space, and we'll talk more about that. He's the CEO of Titinger Consulting, the co-author of this book, Differences That Make a Difference, on many boards, and has done a lot in board service, but is the chair of Excelis, on the board of iCore, and on the board of Form Factor. And hopefully he'll share a little bit more about that. And resides in Nashville, Tennessee. And so let's welcome to the podcast, Jorge Titinger. Jorge, welcome.
Thank you, David. Really happy to be here. I appreciate the time. And like you said, we've known each other since we were in our teens, right? 20 some years. We've aged poorly.
It's been a while, and it's been an honor. It's been an honor because I've seen so many great things in your career, and you have an amazing story, Jorge. I mean, it's really, I love the story. I think there's a bit of humor in it too, which I love even more. And I should also say that you're, in all addition to all this professional stuff, you're a pretty funny guy. I can enjoy hanging out with you and laughing and having some good drinks and kind of stuff like that. But we always start with this exponential growth, podcast. Just tell us about you and your story, and you have a great one, Jorge. So go ahead.
Great. So yeah, Jorge Titinger. I actually have a little presentation that I do sometimes. I call it the crooked path of my career, right? And I was actually born and raised in Peru. I grew up in a great family. My parents were both, highly accomplished professionals. My father was a business guy. My mom was a medical doctor. Well, she's still a medical doctor. She's still alive, right? So that's great. And I spent my childhood mostly, focused on sports and academics, right? I went from Peru to Stanford University to study, and was there. I didn't just hit the books, right? So I both, got a number of degrees, but also played soccer for Stanford. I was the captain of the team, and still hold the scoring record, which is something that I make sure I
Did you get a
tell.
scholarship? Did you get a scholarship to play there, or did he just
I had
recruit
a
you?
full
Or yeah?
ride. Yeah, it
Okay,
was
cool.
great. So I still go to the alumni games, and I tell the center. I played center forward. I tell the center forwards, they have no chance to break my record, and they get all defensive. And I say, no, you don't understand. I'm not saying that was better than you are, but we used to play some really bad teams, and you don't anymore, right? They're all even now. So, so it was a lot of fun. I studied electrical engineering and philosophy as an undergraduate. When I graduated, I turned pro. I played professional soccer for a year, and then the whole league went bankrupt. So I didn't want to start working yet. So I went back to Stanford, got a degree in computer science, and then started working in Silicon Valley. So I stayed in in Silicon Valley for 39 years total, including my school years. Um, I really, worked in two industries, right? I worked in the high performance computing industry or supercomputing, people call it both. And then I worked also in the semiconductor equipment industry for some of the largest companies in their space in that industry. Like you said, I worked at SGI. I was the CEO I worked at SGI twice. First as a senior engineer, manager, director. Then I actually shifted to the other industry, and then at the tail end of my career was hired back to be the CEO of Silicon Graphics. Prior to that, I had been the CEO of a company called Verigy in the semiconductor equipment industry, and both were turnarounds, right, for very different reasons. And I wasn't looking for a turnaround. It just they so happened to be. But there was a lot of fun. It was a tremendous learning experience. The One of the nice things about the companies that I worked in and ran is that they were quite acquisitive. So we would invest in smaller startups. You get one of the executives in the company to be on their boards, and so I started my board experience pretty early in my career, which was great because the first thing somebody asks you when you want to be on a board is, "Have you been on a board?" Right? And
Yeah.
it's one of those that, well, there's always got to be a first one. So this was the problem was solved for me fairly quickly. Today, I mostly serve on corporate boards. Like you said, I'm the chairman of Axcelis, and I'm on the boards of Form Factor and Icor. I also run a mastermind CEO group in Nashville. Um, and beyond the professional side, just got remarried to Carrie. I think you've met her, David, and so we have a very nice blended family now. Um, my older two kids are now married. My second daughter just got married a few months ago, and I became a grandfather a little over a year and a half ago. So I'm having a lot of fun this part of my life, and I work a lot with startups, with small businesses, leaders, et cetera, trying to help them, and a lot in the Latino community.
Oh, excellent. That's a great story, great journey. You're kind of just warming up. You got so many great things, so many great things going on. So with exponential growth, we like to talk about, so what are the trends that you're seeing, these exponential growth trends that you're seeing? You have a unique lens kind of coming in this chip area. Silicon
Mhm.
Graphics was like really one of the, I mean, the leader kind of at the time, and call it innovation chips and what was going
Yeah.
on there. But what trends can you share with our listeners that you see that they should keep an eye on, or even just a little bit of kind of your historical background and the trends that you see?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And to me, there's three. So I like to talk about disruptive technologies, right? Because they're really the ones that actually shift the market, right? Um, there's what I call continuous innovation and disruptive innovation. And continuous innovation by definition means you keep improving kind of linearly on what you had before, but the disruptive stuff is really changing the world. And so for me, there's three areas, and the first one is probably everybody says the same thing, right? It's AI, right? And so when I was at Silicon Graphics, we were one of the three supercomputing companies in the world, right? And so we worked with scientists that were using our computers to model climate change, genetics, cancer research paths, et cetera, et cetera. And it was super expensive. And you had to have PhDs in data science to use these computers and make sense of them. And what AI is doing is really democratizing the way that we interact with computers. So if you can put the current AI tools in the hands of anybody with a laptop, and they can do some stuff that before you couldn't, right?
Yeah,
You
millions of
needed
dollars and mega PhDs kind of thing, right? Or tens of
exactly.
millions of dollars and mega PhDs.
And so that to me is one of the key technologies that's reshaping the world completely, right? Um, I think it will have impact in most, if not all, industries. And some of the ones that are connected to what I'm going to say next, the other two trends are healthcare and clean tech and the environment. Um, Clean energy is the other one, right? And I think what we're seeing is, when I was on the board of semiconductor companies, you start really seeing the demand for power that these factories have. It's unbelievable.
That was my last podcast, was just really digging deep on that and
Oh,
how we're competing with China and all this stuff with AI. Yeah.
yeah, it's unbelievable. And then even AI data centers, the amount of power that they need to run the supercomputers is enormous, right? So this whole emphasis and focus on clean energy and climate tech, I think is going to be tremendously disruptive and will create. I love the Japanese ideogram for dangerous opportunity or crisis. In Japanese is dangerous opportunity, and I think these are the moments when people need to really jump on, right? And jump in into this area and see how they can benefit because it will create uh, dislocations that don't happen in just regular growth. And then the third area for me is biotech and personalized medicine. We have as a world, a population that's getting much, much older. We have all kinds of new things happening. I was on the board of the Stanford Children's Hospital for 9 years. And the technology, the revolution that you see there is unbelievable. There's a technology called CRISPR. I don't know if many people know what it means. It has a very complex name, right? It stands for clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. And what it is really a tool that allows scientists to edit genes with precision, right? So imagine it's a pair of molecular scissors guided with GPS. Right? That's my simplest analogy of what CRISPR does. And you can guide it to find, specific spots in the DNA and cut it, replace it, delete it, etc. So we're not only, as these processes, we're not only going to be able to hopefully cure some diseases that we can't, we're going to be able to prevent them. So
That's right.
to me, those are three super important areas to pay attention to for for really massive growth and scaling.
Yeah. And that third one, they call it like the preventative medicine, longevity.
Yeah,
There's so much, like the more I learn about that space, and AI is fueling it, CRISPR
yeah,
is fueling it, what they've done with the genome.
and
It's a really
and they're all
fascinating
connecting,
space.
right? They're all
Yeah,
connecting. So yeah, I think the most common term is personalized medicine, and so when I was at the hospital, we had an example where one of the doctors, by the way, came and presented to us that his brother had been diagnosed with cancer. Okay. And they were treating him with kind of a regular cocktail of medicines. And luckily, given the connection with the brother, they were able to do a true DNA sequence. And I found that the way they were treating him wasn't really going to be successful. So they shifted the protocol to something very specific that helped them tremendously, right? Now, back then, to do a DNA sequence was tens of thousands of dollars. So it was limited to a small part of the population. As these things go down in cost and increase in availability, we can really take care of people. So that's,
yeah. No, so no, it's an exciting area and one to definitely keep up on. And
mhm.
then so now, Jorge, you've invested as a CEO, you're on boards, you're in the
Mhm.
startup area. With all this exponential growth going on, like which is the other aspect of this, the podcast, how should our members think about, investing in this trends? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts there?
Yeah. This is interesting because I've thought about this and, I always tell people don't chase the shiny object. right? By the time that something's on the front page of Wall Street, much of the alpha is gone, right? And for those that maybe don't know what alpha means, alpha is the differential between the standard returns and the returns that you can achieve, right? So that gap is alpha. And so I tell people to focus on the picks and shovels, right? And that comes from the gold era, right? The
I was
49.
like, that's for studying at Stanford and San Francisco, right, or whatever, the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, right. The name comes from that, where the miners, many of the miners that really got rich wasn't because of the gold. It was because they were selling picks, shovels, Levi Strauss jeans, that everybody had to wear, right? So in the world of I tell people, think about what might be the picks and shovels, right? So companies are investing in compute infrastructure, in power solutions, data platforms, chips. I mean, we are all um, celebrating, right, NVIDIA's massive success because of AI, but that success is attracting tremendous competition, right? So there will be other solutions for the GPU, and finding those companies is, I think, the secret to to realize big alphas, right? So, and then the other thing I tell you is, layer your bets in time, right? I mean, a lot of the new technology won't have payouts until 10, plus years from now. And so you need to be looking for multiple horizons of time. Um, you know, uh, for example, gene editing, that won't pay out for a long time, right? But there might be some technologies today that are going to enable that could have shorter time payback. And then you and I have talked about this a lot. I really pay attention to the people, right? Invest in the right people, back the right people. These are folks that, you know, they'll be successful. Maybe not the first idea, maybe not the second idea, but they're resilient, they have grit, they're committed, so to the extent that you can get to know the founders of these companies and feel like they're winners, place the bet on winners.
Those are great, and you see it's the people, right? And their leadership and the grit and how they can navigate through anything. There's something to be said. We bet on what is it, the jockey, not the horse.
Yeah.
Um, and so that leads into this other thing in leadership, right? So you lead on corporate boards, startup boards. You've led Fortune 500 as a CEO and the board member. So you have all these. You led on the soccer field as well. But we continue to go into a time of more exponential change, right? And I think, I don't know, maybe do you lead the same? Do you lead differently? And what are leadership principles like
Yeah.
in an environment where things are changing and will change so much faster? Your thoughts there, Jorge.
No, that's a terrific question. And so I think there's a couple of things that what is valuable as a leader is shifting, right? And there's a number of shifts, I think. One of them is the not only things are changing in multiple dimensions, but way faster than ever before, right? So adaptability is one of the key traits now for successful leaders, right? Before, when the world was moving slower, maybe still was there, but not as important as it is today, right? So the ability to make assessments quickly, take decisions quickly, and have the courage to change course if it's needed is super important. I see one of the biggest changes in leadership move from IQ-centric leadership to EQ-centric leadership. And um, where, it's a lot more about influencing than commanding, right? And so the when I think about leadership and I start thinking about, so I coach CEOs, right? And I work with these folks, and my background was in tech. So many of the CEOs that I coach are ex-engineers, right? And I tell them, the first thing you need to forget to be a really good leader is forget you're an engineer, right? And they look at me and go,
The
what?
analytical side, the analytical side, yeah.
Right? Yeah, because engineers, I'm an engineer, right? But
Me too.
not
Me
just
too. I'm
what,
an electrical engineer too, just like
yeah,
you.
but it's not that's what we studied, right? It just so
Yeah, yeah,
happens that we studied that, but
yeah.
we have the way we are, right? We see a problem, we want to fix it, whether we get invited to fix it or not, right? We jump in, want to fix the problem. The way we fix the problem is we break it into little pieces, solve each piece, and well, when you're dealing with humans, which leadership is all about, the moment that you broke the problem into pieces, you change the problem. The moment that you solve the piece, you change the problem, right? So it's like whack-a-mole leadership, right? And so adaptability is way more important than it used to be in the past, right? Um, the, we need to rebuild trust. I think this is one of the areas that was a real hit, negative hit from the pandemic, is when we went to so much remote work, et cetera, the ability to actually read body language was significantly impacted, right? And so we need to figure out how to do that in the hybrid world where there's both in person and remote. Um, so there's a great book called Digital Body Language, which is kind of a funny name, but I recommend it strongly, right? It's a good book to read and to think about leadership from that perspective. And then, delegation and trust, right? The more you want to grow, the more you need to be able to trust and rely on your team. And this is, one of the great lessons from the world of sports, especially team sports, is, I played soccer, right? I played, like I said, college, professionally, national team. And I tell people, right, you need every position. Imagine a team with 11 goalies. It'd be pretty, maybe they won't score on you, but you won't score anything. So
Exactly.
you need to value and rely upon and trust the different people in the different roles in the company to do what they need to do and grow really as a team. But to me, the biggest thing is change. And we've always heard this, change is a constant, change is a constant. Now the velocity of change is completely different. And so don't get attached to structures, don't get attached to ideas. Always be testing, are we going in the right direction, right? And the nature of projects has changed, right? I mean, we now have agile and DevOps and all that stuff that, before you would do an R&D project for a product, take 2 years, and you didn't know if it didn't work until 2 years later,
Right.
right? Now everything has to have some kind of feedback in much shorter terms, right? Another sports lesson that I tell people, you need to put things in process that give you feedback. In sports, all you need to do is look at the scoreboard, right? You're winning or losing if you look at the scoreboard, right? So what is that scoreboard for us in business? And as a leader, how do you set those milestones, those leading indicators that can give you early warning that you need to change, or confidence that you're going the right direction and keep going, right?
Yeah. Keep going or double down or triple
Yeah,
down, quadruple down on it. No,
exactly.
those are some good ones. I was writing notes on them, right? I think this whole adaptability, right? And then just always and being able to change course or being agile, right, was a big one. The
Yeah.
IQ versus EQ, and then influencing versus commanding, and trust.
But
And,
no, by the way, let me add a caveat. There are times when you need to command.
that's right.
Right? I
That's
mean,
right.
so, but I used to be asked a lot, what's your leadership style? And my answer was always flexible because it really depends on who I'm leading. There were
Right, right,
people
right.
who needed a lot more hand-holding, people who
Yeah.
needed me to just kind of let them do what they do. Right? So I think that breadth of styles and modes is also important.
Yeah. I think too, I think historically there would be a little bit more of this command, a bit more, maybe leaning more on the commanding side, or I think in this environment, right? I think it does lend itself more to influencing.
Yeah.
And then you touched on trust as part of this just leadership and building trust and the digital body language, the book, and then the other just thing that I was thinking about just delegation and trust and then I thought about this in the in this world of AI, you're seeing a lot of people that are continue to push like, hey, don't hire anybody.
Yeah.
So are you when you delegate, are you delegating to an AI agent and then how does rolling out AI agents deal with trust? And these are the dynamics as you look at org charts and can AI agents do this autonomously and stuff like that? It adds an interesting dimension to it, right?
Yeah. And I think, I stopped calling AI artificial intelligence. I call it augmented intelligence now,
Manage itself. Yeah,
because
yeah,
I think
better.
its real success is going to be when it becomes human assist rather than
Mhm,
human replacement, right?
mhm.
And will it disrupt jobs? For sure, right? Yes. I mean, and it's it's disrupting what other types of automation didn't disrupt before, right? So robotics, etc., were typically disrupting blue collar jobs. AI is disrupting white collar jobs, right? But this is not my study, by the way. I think it's a McKinsey study that's shown that AI could replace about 70% of the tasks that humans do, but only 10% of the jobs, right? Because a job is multiple tasks put together, right? And so now it definitely needs to shift. So the reskilling that is needed now is, how do you best use AI instead of, you know, just how do you replace certain things? There will be some jobs that are replaced, but technology disruptions has always produced more opportunities than it's replaced. Historically, it's been 40% more. Now, those jobs of the future are completely different
Yeah.
than what we have today. So don't fall into the mistake of thinking what I know today is enough for those jobs of the future. So make sure you're continuously educating yourself, learning, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it'll be okay. And the challenge with AI is that what's still very much in discussion, which is how do you use it responsibly?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I think everybody, well, I don't know if everybody, most people will agree that it can help significantly with making things more efficient, more effective, but it's also there's dangers with it, right? Irresponsible use of it could be problematic. So,
Yeah. Well, Jorge, thank you. I know you have a lot going on. Any last things you want to share with our listeners?
a couple things, So one of the things that I think about is what am I looking into the future that excites me, right? And I think the intersection of innovation, and especially in those three areas that I talked about with inclusion, to me is super exciting, right? And as you know, I co-wrote two books on the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion on businesses. And the reality is the impact is enormous if done for the right reasons, not just check the box.
Yeah.
And so if you can imagine the convergence of AI, clean energy, biotech, being shaped by leaders from all backgrounds, that's an awesome future to build. So that excites me. And for me, on a personal level, I love mentoring the next generation. Um, I want to, I want to help people not make the same mistakes I made, right? And so mistakes are super valuable because you learn a lot from them. But if there's an ability to, have people step only on little holes instead of big ones, that help is nice. Actually, I wish I had had
Got a
it.
couple big holes. Did you have a couple big holes there, Jorge?
Oh yeah, yeah. And then, as I said, I have a granddaughter, actually expecting to have a second grandchild
That's congrats.
end of November. And so I want to see that generation, not just my children, but my grandchildren, be able to build a great future. So that's pretty cool.
Ah, Jorge, that's great. No, thank you. Yeah, I know you got so much going on. How do our listeners stay connected with you, follow you on social media and or other places?
So the easiest is through LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn the most. I use a little bit of Twitter and Instagram, but really it's mostly LinkedIn. I was gonna say Facebook, but that's for old people, so I don't say that anymore. But LinkedIn, and then if people want to dig a little bit more into the whole thing on inclusion, the two books I co-wrote with a millennial Peruvian, which is why my hair's all gray, um, are called Differences That Make a Difference, and then the Real ROI, Return on Inclusion. They're both sold on Amazon, and you can find them by their title and my name. And I'm writing a third book, actually, that,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
We break, is this breaking news, Jorge, on the Exponential
breaking
Growth
news.
podcast?
It should be out mid next year. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for that. It's less of a business book, but it's still a business book. It's about leadership and lessons learned from the world of sports in leadership. So
Ooh, that looks to be a good one. That looks to be a good one. Can't wait. And maybe we'll, as you're rolling that out, have you back on the pod to kind of share perspectives on that as well as kind of look, whatever, 5, 6 months, if you come back there, all the change that will have happened, I'm sure we'll have another great conversation. Well,
that would be
Jorge, again,
awesome. David, thank you
yeah.
so much. Really
No, thank you.
enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. All right, have a great one. Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye bye.